This week's show is so jam-packed, I don't even really have time to do this intro. Tony, hit it! Hi everyone, and welcome to Early Years Weekly number 23. Just me this week, as Ruby is away skiing, but don't worry, there's plenty of news to pack into the show nonetheless. And we start off with the interview that we released last week. Now, I filmed this interview with Julian Grenier at Nursery World a few weekends ago. And it was all about development matters. He talked about why they're making the changes, what's going to be in the new development matters, and a really key point on the difference between curriculum and assessment. You can check out the interview in full just here, or if you want to hear more about the takeaways I got from the interview, I'll put a description to our blog piece covering the talk down below. Now, I also reached out to the NDNA, and they sent me out a quote saying that concerns around the misuse of development matters have been raised, and despite guidance to the contrary within the document, it has been possible for it to be used as a tick list of statements that children must achieve, rather than acknowledging the descriptors as a typical range of development. Using the descriptors as actual expectations of where children are expected to be could limit children's development. And this is something that Julian covered in the interview as well, about why we need to move away from development matters being used like this. If you want to check out the full quote that NDNA sent me over, I'll put it in the description down below. There's some interesting stuff in there on Ofsted and how the new development matters is going to need to relate to that. In general, I just would really urge you to check out the full interview either on YouTube or on our blog so you can get the lowdown on what's going to be coming up in development matters over the next few months. So next up, we have the news from the SEED report, which stands for the Study of Early Education and Development. Now, this is a report released by the government that looks at the relationship between early years care and attainment in reception and year one. They look at a whole bunch of things like the quality of care when children start early years care and also the impact of the home environment. There was definitely some mixed results for what we might call formal group early years care. For example, they talked about children having a higher verbal ability in year one when in informal care, so care with friends or relatives. And I think this speaks to the kind of one-on-one relationship building that children get when they have those kind of more informal situations. There was also when children accessed a large amount of formal group care, so over 35 hours, they tended to perform more poorly on things like self-regulation and behaviour once they'd got into the reception year. However, they did also talk a lot in this report about the home environment, and I would definitely highlight that as one part worth reading. It's a little bit of a difficult read in general, this report, but on page 25, they talk about the home environment, and I think that's something that's really interesting for you to look at, to see how what's happening at home can impact what's happening to the child within your setting. So as I said, it's been a busy week for early years news, so I wanted to cover some of the other big stories this week in a quick fire round. So Tony, 30 seconds on the clock, please. So first up, we found out that tax-free childcare has only been accessed by a sixth of the eligible families. Neil Leach from Early Years Alliance said the government need a rethink and it's been a flawed policy from the beginning. Ofsted have made the registration process online more straightforward by modernising the system, and you can now view forms on the gov.uk website, including on tablets and mobile, which you couldn't do before. And finally, the government has accredited 6 apps to encourage parents to boost their children's learning in literacy and communication at home. You can check them out in the description below. So last up this week, I just wanted to signpost you towards a brilliant video I watched, about 20 minutes long, all about the power of play. Now, it's made by a group called International Play Iceland, and it features people like Tom Shear, Teacher Tom from the US, Nikki Buchan from Australia, and a range of practitioners from some of the Nordic countries as well. And they talk about how we need to preserve play and risk-taking in the early years and why that's so vital for child development. I think it's a really important topic, particularly to share with parents and in general the wider public, that they can understand why what we do in the early years is so vital. And I think for me, I think that's where a lot of the problems that we face in early years, whether it's underfunding or a lack of appreciation, comes from. So I think a video like this can be so important. Some key takeaways for me, I loved when Tom Shear talked about the ingredients we need to make young brains, which is good nutrition, physical activity, and mental stimulation, and that's it. Teacher Tom from the US also talked about how children learn to speak so quickly compared to how we learn other languages, for example. And then that's just a sign of how, in the right environment, children can just thrive. Would definitely recommend checking this out and sharing it with the parents in your setting as well. that's it for this week. We'll see you again next time. Hopefully I'll be joined from Ruby back from her ski holiday. And if you have any thoughts on what we talked about this week, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to make sure you get these videos first time before anyone else. See you next time.